Are you looking for inspiring conversations about faith, film, and life? You're in the right place. Here's the host who knows the right questions to ask, Father Edward Looney.
Hey everybody, it's Father Edward Looney here, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Anthony D'Ambrosio. He is the producer, director of a new Catholic film he's working on right now. It's not yet out, but he's really kicking into high gear with producing and seeking funding and such for a movie about St.Maximilian Kolbe, Triumph of the Heart. And so Anthony and I actually went to school together for a semester up at St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it's kind of fun to see where he's gone and where I've gone, and that I have a passion for film. He's working in the film industry, so this is wonderful. Great to reconnect with you about this project.
I'm so happy to be on your podcast and to be reunited.
Yeah, so Our Lady brings people together. Somebody once told me, she's like, Our Lady is the connector of the dots. Like, she'll just make things happen. So that's what she's doing here. And you have this movie, Triumph of the Heart, and it's about St. Maximilian Kolbe. But of course, for you to say, I want to invest a lot of time, resources, I want to fly all the way to Poland, I want to do all of these things. Like, you have to have a devotion to Maximilian Kolbe to want to do that. So what inspired you to write a script and do all this work for the sake of making the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe known?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I guess I'll start with just talking a little bit about um, the fact that when I was just graduating seminary, so this is just a couple years after you met, we got to spend time together. I had a serious crisis of health that catalyzed a crisis of faith. And I was part of the health crisis was chronic insomnia that lasted for many, many, many months, and that allowed me only maybe a few hours of sleep a night. Um, and so during those times when I was awake and no one else was up, in this sort of half awake, half sleeping kind of state, I was really wrestling with God in a deep way about evil and about suffering and grief and his purpose for them and his purpose for them in my life. And I found myself sort of becoming attracted to St. Maximilian Kolbe um, in a way that I had never before. I frankly was a little bit like turned off by him earlier on in my faith journey, just because he has this very, stern, austere look to him in his pictures, and I just felt like he was too serious. Um, but when I was in that state of suffering, I felt like I was in a cell, like I had been imprisoned, and my life was sort of taken away from me. And I didn't know if I would ever get better because there was no diagnosis. The doctors couldn't figure it out. And it was just like living a half life. And in a way, all of the dreams for my future, the relationship that I had with the woman I thought I was going to marry, all of that was kind of stripped away. And the question that I had to ask was, is life really worth living if you know that you are just going to suffer until you die? And of course, I didn't know that, but I was attracted to the idea of the conversations that Kolbe must have had with the other men in his starvation bunker during the final days of their lives. We know that he was able to inspire them to become sort of like champions of the Polish Catholic identity in a place where human identity was trying to be stamped out. And he was able to bring them to staying alive for 14 days. I think a lot of people don't realize this, but Kolbe wasn't the only one who was injected and executed. There were actually 3 other men who stayed alive with him for that long. So to me, there's a lot of miracles of conversion that happened inside of that cell, and I just wanted to. Um, I was curious and wanting whatever Kolbe was able to give to those other men. I was seeking that, and I felt like I gained it through the meditations that I had. Um, I found a hope and a certain openness in my heart that I wasn't able to find before, and that led me to wanting to tell the story.
So the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe has been told in different ways. I know there was like a docudrama. It was in Polish with English subtitles, but it was called maybe The Two Crowns. So I saw that.
Mhm.
I was deeply moved by that back in the day, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. I think that was right at the beginning of when I started writing film reviews that I was able to see that. But then, as news is hitting about Triumph of the Heart that you're making, there was it was either on National Catholic Register or Church Pop where I saw that there's a Polish film about St. Maximilian Kolbe that's being filmed too. And so, why your film? Do you view these other projects like as competition or threats to yours, or like how do you receive all that? I guess or perceive it?
Yeah, I don't know of a Polish film about Maximilian Kolbe that's happening at the moment, but there was one done by a fairly legendary director in Poland, perhaps like the most well-known director. And it had Christopher Waltz in it, and it was mainly about the man who had fled and who was sort of the cause of the lineup. You know, at the time, they knew anybody that fled knew that um, 10 other men would be picked at random to starve from their starvation or would starve. So um, the idea of that story was, what would it be like to live with that guilt, and then to sort of uh, see Colby's canonization and hear about the story that you had left behind. And it was a decent movie. I actually got to meet the director and go and have dinner with him and speak with him, and he gave me lots of advice and lots of insight that was actually pretty crucial for me making my film. So I think with all this kind of work, art builds upon art and story builds upon story. Um, I don't see any threat. I think that all of us have, in some way, influenced each other, have paved, those who have made things about Colby before have sort of paved a road for this. But I would also say that this is the first movie that has been made that really focuses on Colby himself, and certainly on his relationships with the 9 other men in the cell.
Yeah, very interesting. And as we're talking about this film, it's right about the time where this new movie about Mother Cabrini, picked up by Angel Studios, is being released in theaters in March, early March. So it seems that Hollywood is taking some sort of interest, or at least theaters are, in some of these stories. We see The Chosen releasing episodes, and people are kind of hungering. The fact that The Chosen was number 2 or number 3 at the box office the weekend that it came out, I think sends a strong message. So, in some of the advertising for Triumph of the Heart, you're promoting a Kickstarter campaign, collecting funds really to help with production and everything like that. There's a tagline or a headline there that says something to the effect of Hollywood wouldn't make this film, or Hollywood wouldn't make this movie. What do you mean by that?
Um, I think that it's mainly just that the normal process for making film, um, it film is the most collaborative of all mediums, and arguably the most expensive, perhaps next to architecture. Um, it requires literally every type of artisan that you could imagine to be involved in some way, and so you need lots and lots of money. And economically speaking, that also means it's very risky to make a movie. Um, the film industry needs to have some sort of formula in their heads now to know, we're going to be able to make X amount based on the fact that these stars are in it and that it's about this thing. And so we know that this audience will come out for it. That's pretty much how every movie is made in Hollywood right now, is according to a certain formula based on the draws of the stars and the subject matter. Um, but they don't have a formula for faith-based movies. It's a market that certainly they've ignored, um, out of whatever biases are there. But I think that it's also because we haven't quite proven the market. Um, in my perspective, The Chosen and Mother Cabrini are both doing that on a big scale right now. But especially in the Catholic world, there hasn't been a saint film made in recent history that's been commercially viable, where it's made money. If you think about Fatima, that movie lost something like $16 million.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you do the math on it, the Catholic world there's only so many people with money that will get contribute to film, and out of that, they can only do it so many times before their money is exhausted if the movies don't make any money back. So all that to say, Hollywood won't make this movie has more. In some ways, it has a lot to do with their biases and the woke culture and all that stuff that creates blinders for them to this emerging world that actually is the majority of Americans that want meaningful content that isn't shoving politics down their throat. But it also has a lot to do with just the pure business of it. I think if Hollywood started to understand more clearly that you can make a significant amount of money on these sorts of films, I think that there would be quite a few people doing it. And our hope is to prove that in some way.
Interesting. There's a movie that I just heard the producer director speak, and the movie's looking for distribution right now. So I don't know if it's going to be in theaters, if it's going to be on streaming or whatnot. But it was about Sister Blandina, who has a cause for sainthood. Tomas Sanchez made this film, and I watched it. I was very moved by the story of Sister Blandina. So, there are other Catholic movies out there, and I get what you're saying, that like sometimes they're not profitable, they're hard to sell, things like that. So I think this Cabrini movie is kind of novel in the sense of, as it's going into theaters, like I think Mother Cabrini's story is going to be received by Catholics and Christians and unbelievers and all sorts of different types of people. And so that's kind of what you're hoping would happen with Kolbe, is that society, people will know the story of Kolbe and be moved by his life, by his heroism and such, and begin to look at suffering and those types of questions as well. So you're hoping to reach a greater audience than just Catholics, right?
Yeah, I would say that a big problem I think that we've had as Catholics when we tell the stories of our saints is that um, we're not as aware of just the universal human stakes that are involved in the stories of our saints, and so we use a lot of theology and a lot of things that are insider speak in order to signal holiness. So, somebody's levitating or somebody says something prayerful to Our Lady. And these things are all important parts of the saints' lives, but you can't demonstrate true heroism with those kinds of signals. It's kind of like the Catholic version of virtue signaling or something is like knowing the right theology and praying the right prayers and things like that. But the stories of our saints are actually incredibly human stories, and there's a lot about like overcoming evil and fighting for hope and just universal human values that will appeal to anybody that has struggled in some way in their life. And so the hope is that we are able um, to uncover Colby's story and to show the core of it to people who don't necessarily already believe in the Immaculata or in uh, Christ and the gospel, that just the pure human stakes of being in a room with nine other men, knowing you're going to die, and needing to answer the question, why stay alive? Why have hope even now? I think just that story is enough to really capture the imaginations and hearts of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands.
Where did the name Triumph of the Heart come from?
That's a good question. I actually am really grateful you asked that because nobody asks me that, and it's something that I really love to explain. It's one of my favorite things about the movie, to be honest. In Nazi Germany, there was the most famous propaganda film ever made by the Nazis. They had a massive propaganda machine. The most famous one that they made was called Triumph of the Will,
Hmm.
and it articulates and encapsulates the Nietzschean philosophy of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Willpower is what makes the world evolve, etc. And so the opposite of that, I think, is Kolbe's story of vulnerability and willingness to be poor and to enter into suffering on the behalf of other men. And I think that that contrast is really articulated um, by the title.
Yeah, how interesting. So, for me, I have served as a director and producer of a documentary, ended up being distributed through EWTN and now, available on YouTube, whatever. So, it was about roadside chapels. And so it was just telling the story of Belgian roadside chapels here in the United States in northeastern Wisconsin. And so a lot of local people backed to the documentary. People are kind of surprised, like it costs money to make things. Sure, I could have shot something on my iPhone. I could have pieced it together, put it, and made something nice. I do this all the time. I do things with my iPhone, record videos and make like a little voiceover or whatever. But like we were looking to do a very professionally told story to promote the roadside chapels. And so like the price tag was $10,000, probably cost more. The guy gave me a break, but that was just, for him to edit, colorize, come out and film. He gave up 2 days of his life to do this project with me, just filming. And then, there were all the times that we went back and forth with edits and you kind of watched it and you made all these changes. And, kind of interesting. There was this one scene that somehow we accidentally cut. And like the whole time, I'm like, I know we had this segment. Where is this segment? And we accidentally cut it. So in what aired on EWTN, I wasn't there, but now in the YouTube version, it's there. So it's just kind of funny how editing and production work goes. So you have a Kickstarter. You're trying to fundraise money to support this film. And you've gone to Poland. You brought actors there. You filmed there. I was reading the stuff that you were posting on social media. Like you had like some visa questions and issues and all this. So lots went into filming this movie. And now you have all the footage. It's on all these hard drives. And now you have the responsibility of going through, putting together the story, telling the story, so that we can watch it on the big screen. So that all costs money. So I think people they don't understand like the economics of a film. Like, how does this cost money? Why does it cost money to make a film? You've crowdsourced $100,000. So people might say, where's that money? How is it being put to use? So how do you explain kind of the cost of making a movie?
Gosh, oh man, I don't even know where to start.
I know it's
Um,
tough.
okay, well, let's start with this. Imagine a scene from just a normal period piece movie. Most Saint movies are about people who existed in the past, right? Kolbe existed in the 20th century in Poland. And so there's a really particular thing that you have to create in order to make a convincing movie that's historically accurate and at least in some way enough to sell it, um, in order to create that environment. And so every single thing that you see on screen in a normal movie about anybody from the past, you'll generally have this one wide opening shot where they show the environment, they show the street, the cars moving around, all the extra people are walking around, and then the character gets out of the car and goes into the building or whatever, and then they're in a smaller house, but that still looks exactly like it was historically preserved perfectly from that era. And it's just what people don't realize is that every single detail of that shot that feels just completely organic, every single detail was planned and budgeted and cared for. The hat that the lady was wearing,
Mm.
the purse that she was wearing, every single piece of that was either created or rented. The street had to be shut down. You had to put up green screens around the random street signs that have gone up since then. Even if you found a very incredibly accurate, historically preserved area, there's always going to be little things that people have installed or updated that, have an exit sign in there or whatever. And so all of that has to be changed. Usually, even if you get the bones of a place, for instance, the inside house, you'll have to um, go out and rent furniture to bring in for that place. If a character uses a pen or uses paper, you have to go to particular prop houses to find pens that were accurate to that era. The glasses for Kolbe. I can't even
Sure.
tell you the nightmare of finding glasses that were not prescription that are historically accurate. You don't think that you don't think about it, but you realize like there's no such thing as glasses that exist from that time that don't have prescriptions. And if you put them on an actor for 20 hours a day, we're not actually shooting 20 hours a day most of the time. Usually it's about 12 hours a day, but still, that's going to cause lasting damage to their eyes. So anyway, just the the expenses pile up over and over and
Sure.
over in a million ways. Like the parking lot, the food service. It's literally an army that it takes to make a movie, and so you have to have all of the same infrastructure and supply to be able to support the people that are actually working on the creative side of it too. So yeah, it's a massive undertaking that people don't really understand.
So, have you filmed the entirety of the movie, or are there still scenes yet to film?
The entirety of the movie is filmed. There might be little insert shots that we get. Our hope is to finish editing it and to show it to the historians in Auschwitz and to get permission to shoot some time lapse environmental stuff there. Um,
Hmm.
but ultimately, yeah, it's done.
So you're crowdfunding, it's through Kickstarter. It started out, I think, with a very minimal goal, 20,000. You surpassed that pretty quickly. Then it was 40. It kept going up and up and up. And of course, there are great expenses. I personally understand this stuff. So have you just been floored at kind of the fact that people are willing to support this project?
I have not been floored that people were willing to support it. I think I was floored at how fast, like how much people supported it and how fast people supported it. I guess to give an example, um, I've done fundraising in the past, and it's all about relationships usually. Like you build relationships with people and slowly help them to understand what you're doing. And over the course of many months, you might be able to procure something like a larger major gift. We've had people who dropped in $5,000 to $10,000 contributions just that I don't know them at all. They have no relationship with me. They just simply saw the crowdfunding campaign. They saw the trailer and were so moved emotionally by what we were doing that they decided that that was a place that they wanted to put a major contribution. So I think the groundswell of support that has come around this project has been something that I've never seen before in all of the work that I've done in the last 10 years in the Catholic world.
Wow. Is your goal then to be on screens all throughout the country? Kind of like, I hate comparing you to the Cabrini movie, but like this Cabrini movie that's coming out, it's going to be in theaters across the country. You know, that's your goal. That's your hope. You're not like doing like, I'm going to go around to 10 different cities and show this. This is like, that your hope is to distribute it nationwide.
Yeah, the goal is to do that. And the more we get contributed, the more likely that is to happen. The point of the crowdfunding campaign is sort of what I was telling you before about proving that this concept is viable and that there's real economic value there that will give a distributor the opportunity or the confidence to take a risk. Doing a theatrical release for a film like usually costs anywhere between 10 million to 15 million dollars for a small theatrical release.
Mm.
So what we're talking about in terms of what we're hoping that the distributor will gamble on this is pretty significant. And so they'll look at this campaign and they'll say, hey, clearly there's a lot of people that really want to see this movie. They're giving an incredible amount of money, and it's far beyond just like this guy's network. There's a market there. So that's part of the strategy behind all this.
So the Kickstarter is up right now to support Triumph of the Heart, the new movie that you filmed and now you are currently in production with. What's the last date someone can throw some support towards the Kickstarter for this project?
Yeah, March 8th is the final day of the campaign. Our hope is to get to $200,000. We feel very confident that if we do that, we're going to be in a position to be able to make some real negotiations with distributors like Angel or Daily Wire or some of the other bigger faith-based kind of houses in Hollywood. And so that is, we're still about 80,000 away from that. And our hope is that we've been able to show and demonstrate the kind of emotional power of the film from that on the Kickstarter enough to where people are able to see, yes, this is going to be a really powerful movie. It's going to actually honor the saint, and we don't want to see Hollywood do this and ruin it again, like they've done with like Padre Pio or some of the other saint movies that have come out. So yeah, let's tap into that kind of righteous anger and and dig deep and get this thing made.
Oh, this is great. I'm happy you're telling the story of Maximilian Kolbe. I'm a Marian theologian. I know St.Maximilian Kolbe has many great Marian followers and devotees. He gave us a method of consecration. He loved Our Lady so much. And so this is going to be a glorious film. I can't wait to see it. I hope that it meets and exceeds all expectations. You're able to find that distributor. And I know that Our Lady, who is the mediatrix of grace, she's interceding and praying for this project right alongside St. Maximilian Kolbe. So I hope you experience a great triumph with this film. So thanks so much, Anthony, for sharing about it. And hopefully, when the movie's coming to theaters, I can have you back and we can break it down and talk about the film and do another little get together.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Anthony. And go over to Kickstarter and support the campaign today.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. And don't forget to stay up to date with what Father Edward is doing by following him on Facebook, X, or Instagram at the handle @FREdwardLooney. Thanks for listening, and please join Father Edward again next time for another inspiring conversation.